Hi parents, my name is Dr. Pooja Agarwal and I'm here to help you unleash the science of learning with you and your children. I'm really excited to share some of this research with you today and importantly provide some practical tips that you can use at home to help your children study more effectively. So again, my name is Dr. Agarwal. I'm a cognitive scientist. I've been doing research on how students learn for about 15 years. I'm also a teacher. I'm a professor at the Berklee College of Music in Boston, where I teach about 90 college students all about neuroscience and psychology. So I not only do this research on memory and learning, but it's also a large part of how I teach students myself. So I want to jump straight in with a question for you. Do you know how many bones are in the adult human body? Now we have a different number of bones when we're first born, so how many bones do we have as adults? I want you to take a second, maybe close your eyes, think back to maybe high school science, and how many bones are in the adult human body? You ready? The correct answer is 206. So you and I have about 206 bones in our body. And I wanted to start with that question because it's an example of a core foundational principle of learning and memory research, which is what we call retrieval practice. You engaged in this retrieval. You thought about, you mentally traveled back, you pulled that information, you retrieved it out of your head. And we know from more than 100 years of research that retrieval practice helps build students' long-term learning, which of course is what we want at school and what we want at home. This research on retrieval practice has been done with all ages of students in all content areas, math, science, the humanities, with a wide range of students at a wide range of schools. I want to give you another quick example of retrieval practice. You've maybe asked your child, what did you do in school today? And that's retrieval practice. You're probably already engaging in that at home with your children. Now, research shows one way to add to that question, what did you learn in school today? A way to add to that is to ask your child, what did you learn in school yesterday? And that added challenge of having to retrieve, again, pulling information out, but from yesterday, is really going to help your child remember and learn. Plus, it's a fun challenge. They may actually find themselves wanting to engage in that retrieval. What is it that I learned in school yesterday? Now, so often, you've probably had your child really anxious about a test, a big exam. They're cramming, they're highlighting, they're rereading their notes, they're going through all of their notes on their laptop. Maybe they're rewatching lectures. It can be really stressful, these high-stakes tests. And what research shows is that actually rereading and highlighting work. You probably did it when you were a student in school. I know I did in high school and college. We all find ourselves rereading and highlighting because it works. It helps us remember in the short term. And that's why we default to it. Students, your children may be rereading and cramming. They might do really well on the exam. And then what happens? They forget it all. It's all gone. I know I don't remember much from school because I spent a lot of time cramming and then it's all gone out of my head. And cramming focuses on getting information into our heads as opposed to retrieval practice where we pull information out of our heads. So I want to share with you 3 or 4 quick tips and strategies that you can use at home with your child to help boost their long-term learning, not just that short-term learning. Think about it this way. When your students really remember something over the long term, they don't have to keep rereading. They don't have to keep returning to their notes. They can study more effectively with these research-based tips, which will actually save them time in the long run. So let me share these quick tips with you. The first one is I encourage you to have a conversation with your children at home. There are 3 questions that I think are really engaging, that build a fun conversation around learning. The first one is to ask your child, how do you study? Now, you probably already know that, you've seen them study, but you'd be surprised how often we don't actually reflect on that process. So simply opening the conversation with, how do you study? And then a second question is, why do you study that way? Is it because someone taught you? Did you just sort of figure it out? Did you learn at school from a teacher? So how do you study, and why do you study that way? And then a third question I encourage you to ask your child is, does it work? Do your study methods actually work? And often when I ask students this question, does this work? They look at me and go, kinda? Because these study strategies, rereading, highlighting, help in the short term, but not in the long term. And our children, our students recognize that. So start with the conversation. Another tip, a strategy that you and your children can engage in together, is what I call 2 things. And it's simply asking your child, retrieve 2 things that they learned. Pull that information out. What are 2 things they learned in history today? What are 2 things they learned from science yesterday? Now, you don't want to quiz them or make it a high stakes, pressured kind of question. Keep it low stakes. Think of it as just an inquisitive, hey, let's think back and pull that information out. Let's do this to help you learn, but also you're genuinely curious to know more about what they were doing in school. So 2 things can be a really helpful research-based strategy with retrieval practice. Another strategy I want to mention is flashcards. Of course, many students use flashcards. Your children may use online apps. And with those flashcards, there are a few extra added tips based on research. One is to make sure that your child is actually retrieving. They're not looking at the front of a flashcard going, yeah, I know that, and then flipping it over and thinking, yeah, I knew that, right? You want to help make sure they're retrieving. So have them say the answer out loud or say it with you to make sure they're going through that process. A second tip is to reorder their deck. Your children or students should make sure they're shuffling the deck. Otherwise, they have a tendency to just remember the start and the end of the deck, the start and the end kind of in the order, but everything in the middle gets kind of muddy. So make sure they're reordering. The third tip is to repeat. We know based on research that students too often will drop a card out of their flashcard deck. Just because a student got the answer correct once does not mean they should drop it. Research shows that students should keep a card in their deck at least 3 times. So you really want to help make sure that that information is solidified, that they really got it before they drop it out of the deck. So those are just some quick strategies I hope you will share with your children, the importance of retrieval practice, thinking about using flashcards more effectively, 2 things. Really start with a conversation with your children as well. I wanted to mention that I have a number of resources for students. If you go to my website, retrievalpractice.org/students, I've got a list of books and podcasts that they can access. I also want to recommend a brand new guide for parents to powerful teaching by my co-author, Patrice Bain. So it's called a Parent's Guide to Powerful Teaching by Patrice Bain. You can find it on Amazon and elsewhere. And I figure I might as well ask one more time, how many bones are in the adult human body? And it's 206. So I hope you'll remember that. I hope you'll remember the importance of retrieval practice, and I wish you all the best in boosting your students' and children's long-term learning.